Okay, how did I get on stage here advocating for our forests? It didn't come out of the blue for me. I've always had a real affinity for trees and forests. I've visited the redwoods in California over 10 times. I've just always been really into trees. My mom's a real environmental advocate too, and a lot of it stems from that as well. So I've been reading about what's going on in our forests a really long time, but it's really just in the last four years that I've gotten serious about advocacy work. I'm going to start with some local history here. I just think this is so interesting. I came across this a couple of years ago in my parents' house. It was a letter to them about detailing protests, logging protests in 1997 and 1998 in the Slocan Valley. And it's so obvious from the letter that I was trying to find a place for myself in the movement at that time. And I knew then that getting arrested wasn't totally for me, but I was stoked that there was brave people standing up at that time. In that exact quote there, it's talking, I don't know if you can read that, but I remember the police in a SWAT uniform, 3 by 10 marching, and it was just really, really stands out in my memory. And then it's really was cool to read that a few, like 25 years later. So jump forward to 2021, when I saw what was happening at Fair Creek. It deeply, deeply disturbed me, and I committed myself to getting deeper involved. My first bit of advocacy work was trying to change the reporting from CBC, which was totally abysmal at the time, and I got some traction with that. It really seemed to make a difference. So I kind of just went from there with it. I'm super grateful for the life I've been given. I'm super grateful for the forest that I have been able to be in my life, and I just want to help protect it for future generations. So I put thousands of hours into this in the last 4 years. So where are things at right now? So we are in the final stages of incorporating the Save What's Left Conservation Society. We just got a grant from West Coast Environmental Law to support our efforts to protect primary forests, including old growth forests on BC Timber Sales managed lands. And we are working with an array of professionals to put BC Timber Sales under a microscope. We just finished a very comprehensive website. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely, hopefully you can. There's so much data on there, and we've also walked dozens and dozens of pending clear cuts that are in the current year's BC Timber Sales sales schedule. So I like this slide. The power of having informed conversations with the people that you know in your group or just outside of your group is really underestimated, I think, and that's the type of advocacy work that I really want to promote. And you can't really have an informed discussion with people unless you know all this, what's going on. So yeah, if I can do one thing in the 20 minutes I'm speaking with you, it's just to inspire you to keep learning and keep talking to people you know. And that knowledge is power. I'm absolutely certain that forestry in BC is the single most important existential issue that we face, and that we can do something about. We can't do something about what's happening in other countries far away from us, but even just one voice. I know how much one voice makes a difference in this province, and we can do this. So I want to inspire people. We can solve all the social issues in the world, but if there's no habitable planet in a generation or two, what good is that? True. Come on. There we go. Did it switch? So now I'll move on to why am I focusing on BC Timber Sales? In this presentation, I only have time to touch on just skim the surface, really, ultimately. There's just so much to it. So many reasons, but I want to state really clearly that my opinions on BC Timber Sales, they started taking shape initially after having conversations with 3 logger friends of mine and 1 log truck driver and 1 small mill owner. So it's these guys that were telling me that what BC Timber Sales is doing is some of the least unsustainable, like the most unsustainable forestry out there. And it was those conversations with industry themselves that set me off down this path. And it was only later on that those allegations were confirmed by biologists and ecologists. So that's why. That's in a nutshell why BCTS. On my website is a 7-page detailed analysis of 20 different reasons, and I actually need to add 2 more to it. And it's a PDF on my website, and I urge you to read it. There's so much detail in there that kind of backs all this up, and so I'm not going to get into all these points, but I will talk about five or six of them that I consider really key to this particular discussion that we're having today. First of all, BC timber sales, they are the single biggest culprit around for logging where citizens who live in the area don't want them to log. So we're talking front country and watersheds. And nobody, Canfor's the biggest TFL holder aside, and they're small potatoes in comparison to BC timber sales. Also, BC timber sales is projecting nearly doubling their harvest volume over the next couple of years. And I can't read some of this. Oh yeah, that's good. So here, I'm moving right along to a couple more really important ones. BC timber sales is not adapted to climate change. They're still clear cutting like it's 1985, even though we all know it's hotter, drier. These forests that I've been checking out, they're not going to come back. That cedar, that hemlock, it's not going to come back. BC timber sales logging practices, they dramatically increase the likelihood of catastrophic, fast-moving wildfire. That's what all the science points to. And what are the billions and billions of dollars of financial costs and all the social costs that go with this? And then the final one is they justify their sustainability using SFI. And SFI is an international standard that was devised in the 90s by a bunch of industry hacks. And it's still run by a bunch of industry hacks. And the CEO of Canfor is on the board of SFI. Like, it's a joke. So I could go on and on about the nitty-gritty details of BCTS, but I'll spare you for now. So to give you an idea of what like the territory that they cover of our province, they cover about 17% of our unprotected land base, but they're responsible for about 20% of the cutting that goes on in BC. So all that yellow on that map, those are BC timber sales landscape units. There's probably something like 750 of them. So this is the whole province. BC timber sales divides the whole province up into 12 operating areas. It used to be 13, but Haida Gwaii is no longer a part of it. This puts in perspective how much logging BCTS is, how much clear cutting they're going to do in the Kootenays alone this year. Just imagine how much that is. It's about 9,000 logging trucks. It's really, and also keep in mind that this is about a fifth, really roughly, but about a fifth of the logging that happens in the Kootenays. So another point that's good to make here, I think, is that BC timber sales, they only clear cut. They don't, they've shunned, to me, in my face, shunned any type of harvesting beyond clear cutting as unfeasible. So they may leave retention areas, and the more we hassle them about a certain block, but it's still clear cutting. Sorry. Let's see if that works a bit better. So now we're going to zero in on the Kootenays itself. In total, there's 157 huge clear cuts. I don't know what the average size is, probably 60, 70 acres in the Kootenays alone. That's in these areas. Nelson's circled in green. And so we've had a chance to check out about maybe 6 of the areas, maybe 25 cut blocks, something like that. But who knows what's happening in the other 140 areas that we didn't get a chance to look at. This is Sproul Creek, Rickson. This is actually in their last year's harvesting schedule, but this shows Sproul Creek, Rickson in 1984. Sorry, what's happening here? In 1984, and there's only 4 clear cuts that are visible. Tons of primary forest left, totally intact watersheds. Jump forward to 2022, and it's much worse than this now, and it's going to get worse. Trees don't grow back in 40 years. They just don't. Around here, Sproul and Rickson creek flows are now much more prone to drought, flood, sediment, and ecological values have been seriously compromised. So, and BCTS, they wouldn't answer me on questions put forth to them that included our MLA on their justification for the unsustainable forestry that they used the excuse of pine beetle previous and now fir beetle, and they just clammed up, and then they started attacking me instead. Next, so these are just some photos from Sproul-Rixon. There's 2 blocks in particular. We've walked 5 out of 6 with my friend Derek right here. A lot of them. We found some majestic forests, especially in the SMA 095. In SMA 034, the first 2. And then in the next 2 pictures are SMA 095. And it's super lush, wet, crossing 7 seasonal creeks and 3 significant river creeks, year-round ones. So it's just crazy to log that. It will be old growth forest in a generation or 2, so why not leave it? Next up, we're going to talk about Kaslo-New Denver corridor. This one's particularly close to my heart because when I moved here back in the 90s, I spent a lot of time up there, and I watched the decimation of this whole corridor. It's hard to conceptualize all the ecological loss that has happened in that area in the past 40 years. One particular cut block we've looked at is it's the Robb Creek cut block. And in that cut block, we found a tree that measured just shy of 5 feet, but there was literally hundreds and hundreds of giant old growth trees, like iconic, like almost coastal looking. BC Timber Sales doesn't even age that block as being old growth. Because it doesn't have enough stems per hectare or something like that. Anyway, moving along. Here, this shows, this is a little video. I'm gonna see if I can make this play. So this is a time-lapse video that's showing 40 years of BC government logging in this corridor. Kaslo's way up in the right corner. And keep in mind that this scene is repeated over and over again in the 750 different landscape units around the province. There's almost no primary forest left in this area. It's just been brutally savaged, from my perspective anyways. A professional forester or whatever, BCTS probably thinks differently, but I don't. Oh, now I can't move forward. Oh, there, that did it. So again, just a photo of what it looked like in 1984 with the new cut blocks superimposed on it, fully intact. And here it is in 2022, noting that there's been more logging since, and I specifically know where, plus what's coming. It's just entirely logged out. This photo comes from Roster Creek, which is a cut block that is a year or 2 old up there. It's been replanted. It was just heartbreaking. You can only see about half of the clear cut off to the, what is it? Your guys' your guys' left side. It just goes on and on, this cut block, and it's the going norm. It's just another 50 hectare clear cut, 40 hectare clear cut. Can you see me standing on top of the slash pile? That's up Rossiter as well. It's one of the bigger slash piles I've ever seen. Just gonna cruise pretty quick here. I got a ton of ground to cover. There's some photos from this particular block, and I'm only touching on one of the 6 blocks up in that area. I've walked every single one of those blocks in some capacity or another. It's all beautiful forest. It will simply never regenerate to what it was, given the hotter, drier climate, the erosion of the topsoils, et cetera. Mark my words on the Robb Creek block, BCTS is going to get wind of it, that they know all this advocacy stuff is happening, then they're going to put in some ridiculous things like, oh, we'll save all the trees over 85 centimeters DBH, et cetera. Matt's telling me I got 5 minutes left, so I will cruise. Moving on to Oscar Creek. This is south of Nelson. It's, yep. Okay, sweet. Yep, thanks, Jennifer. So Oscar Creek, this is Oscar Creek, Weimar. The only block I've had a chance to actually check out is TA 1472-2. and epic, beautiful old growth forest in here as well. For sure, it's mixed with fire surviving. It's a lot of small forest too, mixed with big fire surviving giants. But it seems to be some of the richest ecological habitat I feel like I've ever seen in the Kootenays. It was pretty amazing being in there for 4 hours. The center tree I measured to being just over 5 feet wide. So we're talking a cedar tree that's this wide, 5 feet, right? And there was no, again, probably due to public pressure and whatever, they're going to save this one tree in a buffer zone around it and stuff like that. But it's not about saving trees; it's about saving forest. There's some photos that really show the diversity of the forest in Oscar Creek. We got cedar, Sitka spruce, hemlock, and a larch. I even saw a huge white pine in there, and I saw fir. But this is one block the BCTS can't use fir beetle as an excuse to log because there's just such a small amount of Douglas fir in that block. So I don't know what their excuse is. Making money maybe? I don't know. Well, they don't do that well either. So that's up next. So next, brief single slide on the Loki face. This is between Ryandell and Garland Bay. It's absolutely spectacular, beautiful, hot, dry, west-facing forest. There is a lot of fir in it. Some of it is dying. Others of it looks very healthy still. I've walked the 3 blocks in the middle. I really, really want to check out that block way up there. It's so high. You can see that from Mirror Lake, where they're going with that, and it's like, whoa. You got to be crazy. Forest way up there, like at 7,000 feet. It's probably right around 6,000 feet would be my guess. It just doesn't grow back fast. I got one more slide on here. And actually, this is cool. The middle tree is one of the coolest trees I've ever seen in my life. It is a meter-wide fir tree, seemingly healthy, growing out of sheer rock with a 50-foot vertical cliff in front of it, and underneath it was a giant bear's den that had obviously been habitated in the last year. It was just majestic up at the top of one of the cut blocks in Loki. I love doing this kind of explorationary work. I highly recommend it. It's easy to put these maps in your phone and just go out and check stuff out for yourself. It's so rewarding, if a little heartbreaking for sure. The last photo is also super interesting because it's an 11 and a half inch around hemlock that's actually 140 years old. It was in the road, in the new road they punched in to get to those middle 3 cut blocks. And that tree is actually technically old growth, or right within a year of being old growth when I counted the rings. And the tree's only this big. And BC Timber Sales says what they're doing is sustainable. Like, absolutely ridiculous. Kai Creek. I don't have tons of time on this one either, but there's 3 cut blocks going in at Kai Creek. This view, you can see how close they are to Otashenya. If you know where the Bombi passes, it's just up the hill, just a half a kilometer or something like that. We're trying. They won't answer my questions anymore. It's imminent that it's going up for sale. So as far as we know, Matt, right? It hasn't been posted for sale yet, but they're supposed to list it in this quarter. And this quarter in last quarter. The new quarter started October 1st, and they still haven't listed it. So we don't know what the latest is. Chances are it'll be logged this winter. It's pretty beautiful. It's spectacular forest. Here's a few photos of when I was visiting it with the biologist Matt Kesselman, who's here today, and Amber Peters, measuring trees. And it's not being logged itself, but there's a tree in there called Lieutenant Dan. It's the biggest ponderosa pine in all of British Columbia, probably the world. It's spectacular seeing it in person. Like, photos don't do it justice. It's so cool. And of course, they're going to leave that one tree in a buffer zone around it, but again, a forest is not. It's not a forest when you leave a few trees in a clear cut. So, what else are they up to around the province? This is the amount of actual old growth, definition old growth. So this is where BCTS has aged the trees at 250 plus years old, superimposed on Vancouver. This is how much they're logging, clear cutting on Vancouver Island alone this year. And take their aging of cut blocks with a grain of salt. I guarantee you they're logging a lot more old growth than that. That's just what they're saying. So here's two areas I really want to check out. I might be able to do this in November. They're in the Namit Valley, and there's 2 blocks around the Cloud Lake Ecological Reserve. Check this one out. So in that last photo on this side, Cloud Lake Ecological Reserve, it's shaped like a U, and BCTS has put a giant cut block in the bottom of the U. It's surrounded by the Cloud Lake. I mean, could you get more, I don't know, than that? It's heartbreaking. So I just have one slide on this, but I could do a 2-hour presentation. Is it worth it? No. BC Timber sells even the $6 and how many cents? I can't even see it. My eyes aren't good enough. $6.65. That's how much per person they're projecting to bring in this year. Next year it might be double that, but it's peanuts. And even if you look at all of the spin-offs, you know, the logging truck mechanics and stuff like that, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. I'd love to do a presentation on that someday. So with that, I'm going to end with this wonderful Latin quote, "Scientia potentia est." No idea how to pronounce that, but you got to like the sound of that. I think science, I think potential, I think potent. And what it means is knowledge is power. So just keep learning and talking to your buds and whatever, and fight the good fight. If you're comfortable doing so, please support our efforts to protect primary forests, including old growth forest on BCTS managed lands, through our GoFundMe, which is through the website, or buy a t-shirt at the back later. And also support Jennifer's group's terrific grassroots work as well. We Save What's Left is responsible for fundraising to top up our legal fees, so I kind of have to somehow come up with about 10 grand over the course of the next year to kind of balance everything out. And so you can be in all of our work's volunteer, so you can be certain that your money is going to a great cause. So that's about it. Thanks, everybody. So do I open up for questions now? Sure. I don't know if I need that plugged in.
Thank you so much, Joe. I know that you've done everything on your own time and your own dime so far, yeah?
I have done it.
Yeah, huge. And that's what's happening in BC is residents are doing things on their own, and this is amazing work. Thank you so much. So we've got one microphone for Q&A. So if you got some questions, you're gonna have to come up and say them into the mic. So don't be shy, come on up. We'll share the mic between you guys and Joe.
Someone's gotta have a question.
Yeah, come on up. Get right close up to the mic.
Sure. I just have a hard time understanding how BCTS is part of our government and how they're able to do all the things that they're doing with everything that's going on in our environment. And is there just a complete disconnect between the party in power and BCTS, or could you tell us a little more about the history of how all of that works?
Sure. I've thought a lot about this stuff and studied it a lot. But I'm by no means a total expert, but it was Gordon Campbell's government back in 2003 that set the whole scam up, and that's what it is. It's a frickin' scam, as far as I'm concerned. What is it now? I think the biggest problem personally is not our elected officials. It's not our premier. And this is. You name the organizations, but it's rot in the first 3 or 4 tiers at Ministry of Forests that are causing this. This is my personal feeling. It's the bureaucrats, and because the bureaucrats manage up. It happens in every organization. How can a board of, like, you take a board of directors for even a small organization, they can't be experts on everything, the law, this, that, the other thing. The Katrine Conroy, when she started being the Minister of Forest, do you think she had a clue about forestry? No. Bruce Ralston? No. They manage up, right? So it's those bureaucrats that are the problem as far as I'm concerned, and they're all a bunch of industry lackeys. Like, I'll tell you, our new district manager, Charlene Stryloff, sorry to say, but she came from BCTS, then she went to Mercer for 4 years, and then she's government again, and it's the same at the top. So, you know, everyone in the room probably knows, but there's maybe a couple that don't. Diane Nichols, she was our chief forester for the whole province, setting the annual allowable cut, among other things. And this woman jumped ship to go to Drax International as their international sustainability manager. That's her title, something like that. No, boo is right. Oh. So that's some thoughts on that. I think it's the bureaucrats, and I do want to say this. We just learned on Thursday that the BC government is targeting BC timber sales for review in their election platform. So I believe, more talk and log. That's the cynical side of me. It says more talk and log. But on the other side, I see potential. Look what David Eby did with ICBC. He shook it up bad in the gambling pirates. And so there is hope. And David Eby comes from an activist background. He's pretty badass. So, talk and log or that, I don't know.
I'm no expert on BCTS, but it's my understanding that BCTS was formed in response to the softwood lumber arguments that Canada was having with the States, and that BCTS was created as a way to demonstrate that BC logging is not subsidized. It was all about market value. So BCTS was created in order to have a system that was acceptable to the United States, that showed that we operated under a system where there is actual real market value to the timber and that it wasn't being subsidized. So if we want to change BCTS, I think that's an important piece to acknowledge and work. So we need a different way to show the true market value of our lumber. That's all I want to say.
Questions and comments, come on up.
Well, could I comment on that?
Yes, but come on up so everybody can hear, but, yeah. So we'll let him comment and then we'll go next. Yeah.
Whoops, whoa.
Watch the cords, watch the thing.
Whoa. Okay, well, that's good to know, but if that's true, then why does BCTS have to be so huge? Couldn't it be way smaller? That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, thank you. Joe, did you want to respond to that?
There's so much low-hanging fruit with BC timber sales. They're the easiest target because it's so asinine what they're doing. And so you just take trying to meet our 30 by 30 targets for protected areas. The only way we can do that without protecting giant amounts of rock and ice and just low ecological value areas is by using BCTS areas. So just that one thing alone, there's so many reasons. I don't know.
Thanks.
Joe, I just want to say congratulations. You worked really hard and you gained the trust of the West Coast Law, and you were able to get the grant money for that. So I just want to know if you could explain what your intentions are to do with that funding.
Sure. I kind of have to keep that a little bit vague for sure. I have a wonderful lawyer named Ben Issett who has 2 PhDs, and he is sharp as a razor, and if he was in the room, I would have him answer that question.
So So we got time for one more question after this, if anyone has questions.
Since I'm the short person. Hi, my name's Jacqueline Steckler. I'm with the West Kootenai Watershed Collaborative, concerned with watersheds all along Kootenai Lake down to the confluence of the Columbia. You gave a really good talk. I have a few questions. First of all, I want to point out to everyone how opaque language is. If any of you have seen what industry did with Forest Week. One of the questions I have for you, Joe, is that in the struggle to try to gain attention of urban dwellers, which is where the money lives, is that I think there's been a great confusion now of the terms. How do we advocate for change when the terms themselves are troubled? Tokenism, the one tall tree they leave. Do the terms work, and are they understood by the people you're trying to reach? Is there another way to do it? I think it's a struggle, because when we come to them with the same language and play in their court, they're in control of that discussion. So I'm asking if you see another kind of way through the side door, one, and two, what is the role of private equity markets of Toronto in this discussion?
Some really good points there. I guess regarding the terminology, I actually missed a slide. I'm glad you said that, because that talks about how important I think it is to change the conversation from protecting the last of the old growth to protecting the last of the primary forest. And that's particularly important in the interior, and that's a conversation that's really gaining a lot of traction right now. So that doesn't really answer your question completely, but it's part of it. And I do think you're right in that the problem, and even in talking to our MLA, we know that the problem is that only rural people understand this, but the voting base doesn't. So you're completely right. Yeah. So, and then the other part was getting lost on my brain right now somewhere. Private, yes. So I don't have any magic bullets there, but part of that deep dive that I'm doing does involve going back to source. And I would love to do another 2-hour presentation at some point in time on all the subsidies and all how invested people are. Like Jimmy Pattison is a bad person if you like trees, right? For example, he's Canfor, blah blah blah. I could go on from there about that, but the subsidies it's bonkers. There's no reality in what's happening, and I'll have to leave it at that. I don't know.
Yeah, so my question is, how do we prevent more talking and logging? Obviously, there's a multitude of approaches, from class action lawsuits to just messaging your MLA to even blockading or something like that, but it doesn't appear to really be working. And sadly, there is a sense of urgency with this issue, because in 20, 30 years, this won't be an issue anymore if it carries on as it is. So how do we prevent more talking and logging?
I don't have a magic bullet, but it's stuff I've thought long and hard about, and I wouldn't be doing what I've been doing for the last 4 years if I didn't think it was working. And I've seen the results of it working so much, actually, and not just my work, but Jennifer's work, for example, with just so much. She's done so much work over the last the 4 or 5 years I've been paying attention. And it is working. For example, our MLA, Brittany Anderson, she did not understand the issues 3 years ago at all, believe me, not a clue. She understands the issues now, and I'm pretty sure I know whose side she's on. So, you know, it's a trickle thing, you know. We got to get rid of some of these old white men who are running the show at MOF and whatever. So, but, you know, what do you do? I know what I'd do if I really had carte blanche, but then never mind, bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Joe. I mean, it's people like you who are making the difference, and everybody in this room, I'm sure, is incredibly well informed. So we're all here to keep the power moving along here. Thank you so much, Joe. Let's give him a big hand.